Hello YouTube folks, welcome to my channel. My name is Steph and today I'm going through all of the 10 books that I read in the month of May. So this month was kind of all over the place. Genre-wise, there's a lot of classics, a couple series, but it was a really good month. I felt like I slowed down a lot in my reading. I wasn't like in any hustly, gotta get these books down, can't wait for the next one type vibe, but I still ended up reading 10 books. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know, like, it's honestly so crazy to me how I get to the end of each month and I tally up all the books I read, and it's so many when I feel like I really didn't read with any haste. Let's just get into it. Okay, I had to get up and grab all the books because I forgot that also something about May was I was really good. And I read quite a few books that were on my shelves already that were just waiting for me to give them attention. I was very good. But the first book I do have a copy of. The first book I read this month was the second book in the Shepherd King series, Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. Somebody commented this on my last reading wrap up where I talked about One Dark Window and said that this series is a dark horse, and I literally couldn't put it any other way. This is a dark horse series. It is so good. It's just a duology. I mean, they could do like spin-offs, but it ends in this ginormous book. It's just so good. So good. The second book is very different from the first. The first is like single POV. It's very first person-y. It's very kind of like discovering of self, discovering of the situation. And then this book is like, it's almost like an adventure tale. Like it kind of feels like Lord of the Rings, but obviously not Lord of the Rings, where it's like many POVs and they're each kind of on their own journey in the greater umbrella of the big goal. I'm not going to say any more on that. If you don't know what the series is about, it's about this land surrounded by mist that if you go in it, you go crazy. There's cards called Providence cards and they have powers. Kids get a sickness, and if they get the sickness, the king kills them because he believes the only magic humans can possess is through the cards. And there is a prophecy that if one of each of the cards, there's 12 kinds of cards, and like each kind of card has a different amount that exists. If all 12 of the different cards are collected, the mist will lift. The illness killing kids, well, the illness that the king is killing kids for having will cease, and all will be well in the kingdom again. And this one main woman has the illness as a child but isn't found. And that's all I'm gonna say. It sounds really convoluted. It sounds a little basic considering all like the fantasy craze that's happening nowadays, but it's just, the way it's written is it's just really good. It's honestly really excellent writing for something that's kind of just like a silly fantasy that's not super like complex. It's just really good. This book is like heavy and yesterday was Arms Day. That's why I'm not holding it up for the whole time I'm talking about it. Oh, and that was 5 stars. The second book, Two Twisted Crowns, was a 5-star read, and that duology in general is like in a top favorite reads of 2024 for sure. The next book I read was What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu. This is a nonfiction book about complex post-traumatic stress disorder and how being severely abused as a child, generational trauma from having parents that are immigrants, etc., affects an adult person. Stephanie Fu has CPTSD and talks a little bit about her journey, and she also like does really extensive research and exploration of CPTSD because it's such a new concept. And it's just really interesting. I gave this 5 stars. This is also a favorite read of 2024. I definitely recommend people who have PTSD or maybe CPTSD, like if you think you have it, definitely read this book. It's really interesting. It's really eye-opening. She criticizes a lot of research already done on PTSD. I listened to the audiobook which she narrates, and she actually included direct audio from her therapy sessions that she like verbatim scripted in parts of the book, and that was sick. It was really cool. I just really enjoyed this book. I really recommend it. It's not for the faint of heart, of course, just like a lot of nonfiction that explores mental health. But I feel like I got a lot out of it, and I thought it was really interesting. The next book I read was What a Time to Be Alone by the Slumflower. I don't know how to say her real name, Chidera Agiru. There's no way I'm going to say it right. There's no way. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to call her the Sunflower because that's what I know her from her podcast. This is also a nonfiction work, just kind of like exploring being single as a place of empowerment rather than like constantly seeking partnership. It's just a really interesting read. I really love. That's her on the back. She's fabulous. She's beautiful. I really love her podcast, and I follow the Sunflower on Instagram. So I wanted to get her book to like support her. And it was a really quick read. It's one of those like almost like inspirational like nonfiction books. See where it's like actually not words all over each page. And she also talks a lot about her like African heritage and the things she learned from her mom and stuff. It was a really fun read. I had a good time. I gave this 4 stars. 4 stars. Like I said, I didn't like glean a lot of knowledge from it, not the way I did from what my bones know, but I still had a really good time. It's good. It kind of reminds me of Women Don't Owe You Pretty by Florence Given. I think I read that last year, where it's like I didn't learn anything, but it's still nice to like get your previously disposed knowledge like affirmed, you know? What a Time to Be Alone. The next book I read, I really liked this one. Word Slut by Amanda Montell. She is a rising nonfiction author, but she is a linguist, and she wrote Word Slut as like a feminist exploration of the history of language and how language functions and perpetuates like the patriarchy or can be used as a feminist tool in today's society. Really interesting stuff there. Again, she's a linguist. She has degrees in this stuff. But it really makes you think about how women speak and how men speak and how men and women speak to each other, how language is so gendered. So like gender fluid or non-binary or trans people struggle to kind of find comfort in the language that we are so comfortable in nowadays, but also how language that was comfortable was so different only like 100 or 200 years ago. Something that I really was affected by was like how y'all is perceived as like improper, or like if you say y'all, you're not smart. But only like 100 or 200 years ago, y'all was like heightened language, and you used to be plural in the same way that y'all is, you all. You used to be plural, and thou was singular you. So it just totally discredits like the whole idea of like y'all has always been like what Southern like uneducated people say, but it's just not true. Y'all is just the continued progression of you, which used to be plural and is now singular, and thou was the predecessor to you, which used to be plural. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it right. I'm not saying well. I'm not a linguist, but I really recommend this book. It's really interesting. She has chapters on history of language. She has chapters on patterns people speak in. Like she talks about how women typically speak in like jam session styles where, you know, somebody will say something and somebody else will like pitch in or be like to like affirm what you're saying, versus men, what does she call it, like podium style or something. Men will speak and all the other men will listen, and then the man speaking will be done, and then another man will take a turn. And that's why a lot of the times when men and women are talking to each other, and this is all, you know, relative, this is all very general, this is just within the concept of like the gender spheres of the 21st century, but she talks about how that struggles to continue those patterns between men's speech and women's speech when they're speaking to each other, because like men get agitated when women are interrupting them, but women aren't interrupting them. They're just doing the jam session style of speaking where they're affirming you or they're adding to your story versus just like taking turns. and women feel like they're not being listened to if men are not contributing to what they're saying by affirming them with or like, oh, and also don't forget this. Like, so it's just really interesting. I thought it was really interesting. I think if you're a feminist or you really like language, you should definitely read the book. And I know Amanda Montell is very much a rising nonfiction writer. She has another book called Cultish, explores the language of like cults and religions, and I think she just came out with another one that's about some sort of critique having to do with social media or something like that. But yeah, Wordslit was another 5-star, another fave of 2024. I feel like I learned so much from it, different from What a Time to Be Alone, which did just like affirm knowledge that I already had and was like nice to see put in maybe a different way. Wordslit, I feel like I learned a lot from. I really recommend that one. The next book I read, I know all of you have read it. Every single one of you have read it. Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I can't believe I haven't read this yet. It's been sitting on my shelf for eons. But this was incredible. I read Madeline Miller's other book, what is it? Circe, and I liked it. It wasn't like blow me away amazing, but I had a good time reading it. But this is Madeline Miller's masterpiece. I'm sorry to say it. This is incredible. It's just like a full life story of, I'm not going to say it right, oh no, Patroclus and Achilles, their life together. And Madeline Miller is like a Greek historian first, author second. I actually went to like one of her author talks sessions earlier this year, and she talked about that, how she comes from a different position than a lot of other authors, where she was an academic in what she writes about first and an author second, and how that just affects her writing and her style. And she wrote this book as though the gods were real. It's just a beautiful love story, but also like an exploration of the complexities of politics and how culture, how the Greeks will obsess over honor and being the biggest, most egotistical. Like, that was very honorable to be like full of pride, and Madeline Miller talks about it but doesn't critique it. She's just like, and that was the Greek way. I don't know, it's Madeline Miller is a very unique writer. The story is so beautiful, and the ending made me cry. I don't cry very easily with books. I cry easily with movies. I don't know why. I did cry in like that very last section, because it's true to the story, you know? It's just really good. It's a really good like beach read that's a little more serious than like Emily Henry or whatever, which I don't even know why I would recommend this to you, because I'm sure you've already read it. If you haven't, do yourself a favor and read this book. But this was a 5-star, another fave. I had a really good time with this one. Song of Achilles. Okay, now we're getting into classics. We're getting into the classics. The next book I read was Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. I feel like I apologize every single time the name isn't like John Smith. I'm so like bad with names. I'm sorry, friends. I'm sorry. I also took Spanish in high school, so French pronunciation is like beyond me. Delicious. This is delicious. My cover is like from the movie or Netflix show, I guess, whatever. It's just a delicious tale. It's an older book, so there's definitely like some strange things, like a huge age gap between the main two characters. But they're not like sexual or anything, so I didn't feel super uncomfortable with it. You kind of just have to like set aside your modern perspective and recognize that this was written in like 1920 or whatever. So things were very different. And also a part of it is that she was just looking for any means to escape. But it's like this gothic tale. Maybe it's a romance. It's more like pining. It's more like desire. It's not very romantic. But it's about this woman who is in servitude, and this man just kind of meets her and is like, do you want to marry me? And she's like, will you take me away from servitude? And he was like, yeah, I got this beautiful mansion, let's go. So they go, and then she finds out, because all of his like servants and all the neighbors constantly talk about his recently deceased wife, Rebecca. And the main woman has to like discover the mystery of Rebecca and like work through her feelings for her new husband while also working against the servants that are like trying to sabotage their marriage. It's just a really delicious tale. It's very soap opera-y, and it's definitely gothic. You know, I have beef with the obsession over gothic tales and how you can't just plop somebody in like an old building and be like, it's gothic. No, this is actually gothic. And I really had a good time. This is another fave, another 5-star. Wow, I had a lot of faves this month. A lot of good reads. We'll get into the bad reads soon. But yeah, Rebecca, really, if you struggle with classics because it's like not digestible literature, I think this would be an easy one. It's a little long, so you have to like bear with it a little, but it's really easy to digest because it's almost like a game of Clue. It's almost like a whodunit, you know? Rebecca. The next book I read was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne-Jones. Wynne-Jones. Whatever. And it has like the Ghibli picture on it. I bought this forever ago. I love the Ghibli movies. They're like some of my favorite movies of all time. So of course I bought the book that one of the movies is based on. I remember waiting to read this. I was like procrastinating reading this because so many people were saying it's very different from the movie. But I disagree. Like, I feel like it stayed pretty true to the movie. Or the movie stayed true to the book, right? The book was first. The only thing is the movie got rid of like one major plot line, probably just for like condensing time, but I felt like it was pretty true. I do. Howl is definitely less likable in this tale, but I felt like it was kind of the same. It was pretty same. So if you like the movie, definitely read the book for a bit more of a deep dive into like all of the things that the movie touched on. If you don't know what it is, get out from under your rock. It's about this different land. I think it's like Britain or whatever. And there's wizards and magic and stuff. And this oldest sister who runs the hat business is cursed by the Witch of the Waste to be old, and she leaves the hat place to go find Howl, who lives in a moving castle. The castle moves so he can avoid the Witch of the Waste who's hunting him, and she goes to Howl and she just like kind of moves in and joins in on the adventures and festivities of wizards and witchery. So it's cute. It's very like fantastical. It's a kid's book, I think, technically. Like I think it's for young readers, but it's cute. It's not as romantic as the movie. That's another thing because never mind, no spoilers. But there is a reason for it, like explained in the book. It's just a good time. I had a good time. It was fun. It's lighthearted. It's a little silly, and it feels a lot like the Ghibli movies, which are also fun, lighthearted, and a little silly. So I gave this one 5 stars. Not like a favorite read of 2024, the way a lot of other books were, but I had a good time. Howl's Moving Castle? Oh no, the next one. I'm a little embarrassed about this. The next book I read was Persuasion by Jane Austen. It's been a really long time since I've read a Jane Austen, and honestly, I don't even remember which one I read. I know I did read one because I have this, like, massive book that's just, like, it's gorgeous. It's, like, all of her major books in one. The print is tiny. It's like a freaking Bible. And I read one of her books, God, years ago, I don't even remember, and asked if I could get more of them for like Christmas one year or whatever. So my dad bought me this giant book instead of just buying me all the other books. I don't even remember which one I read, but I remember enjoying it. But I picked up Persuasion because I really liked the Netflix movie with the actress, what's her name, Dakota something from 50 Shades of Grey. I loved it, so I wanted to read it, and I DNF'd it. My second DNF of the year. I'm so sorry, friends. I should have started with like Pride and Prejudice or Emma, like one of the really popular. Persuasion is popular, but it's not nearly as popular as Pride and Prejudice for Jane Austen's stuff, but I got to like a third of the way through and I was like, I don't even know characters' names at this point. I'm so lost, and I'm so bummed about it because I've been living for classics this year. I've been reading a lot of classics, catching up on the books that everybody else has read, and I struggle with persuasion. So I'm taking a break. I actually just this morning started Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, so that's my old-timey Jane fix for now. But persuasion was a lot, and I think I need to start with Pride and Prejudice to rekindle my Jane Austen feels, because that's like, right, her most famous, her best book. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't give it 1 because it's not like I didn't like it because I thought it was bad, right? I was not following the script. I was not understanding what was going on, so I'm really sad, friends. I'm really sad about this, but it's okay. I'll be back for Miss Jane Austen. The next book I read was for my book club for this month, and that is, what is it called? A Psalm for the Wild Built. Is that how you say it? A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I give this 5 stars. It's a super duper quick short read. I think it's like 140 pages, and it's cute. I don't think I learned a lot from it, but definitely if you're not interested in philosophy, nonfiction, this is a great philosophy fiction work, I think. It's about this assumably dystopian world where robots became sentient, and then instead of like killing humans the way a lot of science fiction will have them do, the robots decide to join nature. They want to be less human and more animal. So they flee into nature, and there's like a compromise between the robots and the people where the people will stop depending on robotics. So no more robots. They've returned to like older machinery, but they're still like modern. And a lot of people have become monks, which is like, there's like these new gods, and people are like disciples of the gods, and this monk who's really having a hard time like finding their way in life and a pathway to what they want to be, dips and like goes into nature to find themselves, and they meet a robot. Robots and humans have been separate for assumably centuries at this point, and the robot comes up to the monk and is like, I want to come back into society to study you guys. You're my first pick. And the monk is like, no. The monk is also non-binary, which I thought was a really sweet, like, thing that wasn't a big deal. Like, it's not anything to do with the plot. It seems to be pretty normal that there's non-binary people. They don't even, like, call themselves non-binary. It's just, like, it's in third person, so the pronouns used for the main character is just they. It's just they. It's really neat. It's really cool. But the robot and the monk have some really interesting conversations, and it's pretty moving. I think it would make a great movie, or like TV show. But like I said, I didn't learn anything new, but I had like a fun time. I read it in like one afternoon. Quick hour and a half. A Psalm for the Wild Built. 5 stars. The last book I read this month was The Fury by Alex Michaelides. Obviously, I love The Maidens. Oh my god, you can't see it because of the glare. That's so funny. This is The Maidens, and I have Silent Patient there. I really liked those 2 books, so I wanted to read The Fury, his new book this year. I didn't like it. I mean, I had a good time. I didn't dislike it because it was bad or because I didn't like the story. There were just some major elements I struggled with. So it's essentially like a plot within a plot within a plot type style. It's about this really famous, gorgeous, boots down, whatever, actress who's getting older, who invites all of her best friends to a Greek island to kind of discover who's plotting against her. It's like trying to be told from an unreliable narrator. Like the narrator addresses the reader. And I mean, I had a good time. It's definitely like a big whodunit. It's definitely really interesting. And then the ending's pretty predictable. But my biggest issue is that there's a lot of discussion about the narrator being abused as a child. And this is a spoiler. Spoilers. I have to talk about it. Spoilers. So the narrator ends up being crazy. And a lot of what the narrator has to say goes back to his abusive childhood and how his parents were cruel to him and how he clung to this beautiful actress he saw in movies, Lana. And I really didn't like that pipeline. I really didn't like that explanation for why the person was crazy, because I know a lot of people who were abused as children who are not crazy, and I know a lot of people who had perfectly healthy childhoods and ended up being crazy. It just gives people who were abused as children a really bad rap. And there's already so much literature and like media about this where it's like what, like the Joker or whatever, I don't actually know, like the Gotham tales, but like the Joker had a abusive childhood and was in and out of foster homes, so of course he became an evil villain. And it's like give these people a chance. Like, being abused as a child is enough to work through once you're an adult. You're just adding fuel to the fire for a person to feel ostracized and isolated as an adult. Like, and maybe it's just for me personally because I was abused pretty badly as a child. I've talked about this before on the channel. Like, I'm not crazy. You know, so to read a book where it's like, the reason why I obsessed over her and why I pursued her through all my life and why I blah, 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 like, you know, kill her in the end is all because I wanted her for myself from the movies I would watch of her as a child to escape my dad beating me and, like, not having enough money for new pants, even though I, you know, shot myself after getting beat up at school. Like, no, I don't want to read that. Again, maybe this is just me, but I really, being abused as a child doesn't make you crazy as an adult. It doesn't. It makes life harder, obviously, because you have so much more to work through. There's a lot of like ways it affects your brain and your development that could alter your mental health, your personality, your moods, whatever. That's all fine and well and good. But just because you're abused as a child doesn't mean you're going to be crazy. And I also don't think it's a justification or even necessarily an explanation for becoming crazy. There are plenty of people who had perfectly normal childhoods who still villainized everybody in their life and still ended up being crazy. Ugh, okay. I'm getting a little heated, so I'm going to stop talking about it, but I just really didn't like that plot line. It felt a little bit like a thorn in the side for me as the reader, because I was like, you're crazy because you're obsessed with a woman because you're an audacious man. You're not crazy and obsessed with a woman because you were abused as a child. I'm sorry. It's just not how it works. And I didn't appreciate that. And Alex Michaelides wrote really good stories with women and men in The Maidens and The Silent Patient, but he did not do a good job with his exploration of how men operate when they're abused as children. I just didn't agree with it. I just didn't like it. It just wasn't for me. So that was 3 stars. 3 stars because honestly I liked the whodunit vibes. The characters were all well written, and the Greek like island vibes were fun and delicious, but yeah. No. And that was the last book I read in May, which is a bit of a bummer. But like I said, I started Jane Eyre this morning, so that's giving me good vibes. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. I'm not your mother, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.